Good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar. I am Suzanne Hilser-Wiles, Managing Director and Lead of Huron GG&A Global Philanthropy, and I am excited to be speaking with today's guest, Dr. Michael Moody of the Lilly School of Philanthropy at Indiana University. Because of time constraints, we won't be able to answer questions live, but if you put your questions in the chat at the a button at the top or bottom of your screen, we will respond to them in the days ahead. Before joining the faculty of IU, Dr. Moody was the first Fry Foundation Chair for Family Philanthropy at Grand Valley State University in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and served on the faculty of Boston University and the University of Southern California. He has published 3 books on philanthropy and social innovation, and his work has been featured in the New York Times, the Washington Post, Forbes, the Chronicle of Philanthropy, Stanford Social Innovation Review, and many other noteworthy publications. We are thrilled to have him here with us today. Welcome, Dr. Moody.
Yes, thanks for having me.
So we're going to dive right in since we only have half an hour. We talk a lot about declining donor counts in advancement. What have you learned about generational differences in giving that you think is impacting that decline?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me again, and that's a really important question. In fact, I would say it's pretty close to the most important question in the field of philanthropy right now. This broader issue of, as some people are putting it, donors down, dollars up, right? The idea that we know, and it's evidence that's coming out from the Lilly Family School that I'm a part of, that the number of households who say that they give in traditional ways, give to charity, and by the way, it's also true for volunteering, and that has gone down, and that continues to go down. In fact, it's going down fairly dramatically and troublingly over the last few decades. So much so that, they created a couple of years ago, they created this generosity commission in the United States to look at this dynamic of, what's causing this. And it commissioned a bunch of research on what's causing this and what can we do to address this, because the idea is that it's becoming less common for a household, in a given household, to say, yes, we give to charity than it used to be. And in fact, it went under 50% by our data a few years ago. And that sort of became the canary in the coal mine, if you will, that there's a real crisis here. But we also see other numbers, like Giving USA and others, that say that the amount of money that is given to charity continues to go up. As long as the economy's going up, the amount of giving goes up. So that means that the pie is getting bigger, but fewer and fewer people are contributing to that pie, which means that more and more of those contributions are coming from the bigger donors. So how this relates to the next generation is that we know that the next generation is having a bigger decline than other populations when you consider the broader economic spectrum of the next generation, not just big donors. We know that the next generation is going down even faster, and that they are doing things. We're trying to figure out why that is and what are they doing that makes that happen. Because at the same time that we know that they're giving, that fewer and fewer younger people are saying they are giving to charity in the traditional ways, we also know when we ask them that they want to change the world, they still want to change the world. They're still very passionate about making changes and helping those who are in need and supporting the causes that care about them, including the institutions to which they're connected, like their alma maters and others. So they have this passion to still be generous, to still make change, but they're giving less. And so we're starting to learn about why that is. One reason we know, of course, is economic. And that is that the financial pressures on the next generation, including many recent college graduates, especially because of things like this student loan kind of crisis. I mean, I consider it a crisis. If you look at the exponential amount of student loan debt that's over the last 20, 30 years has really become significant. And other economic dynamics in the middle class mean that younger people are experiencing financial challenges, especially in the kind of their sense of their discretionary income, which we know your sense of your discretionary income is a big predictor of how much and whether you're going to give. And so if they feel like they have less money to give, they're going to give less. And then the other thing that's going on that we know, this sort of second big cause I'll highlight is this expansion in the other ways that they decide that they want to go about making the world a better place, right? We know they want to make the world a better place, but it used to be you'd ask them, how do you want to do that? As we have in research in various ways, near the top would be, I want to give money to a charity, or I want to volunteer for a charity. Now that's gone down the list. And there's other elements in what Lucy Bernholtz out at Stanford calls the giving scape, the sort of landscape of different ways that we give. And so things like becoming involved in an organized movement, changing my consumer choices to be more conscious in my consumerism, as people talk about it now, where I buy fair trade goods, or, do a one to, buy one, give one kind of, or I make sure that I support social enterprises or triple bottom line companies, or I take a job with a triple bottom line company, even if it pays me less, because I want to, do good in that way. So online giving, informal giving, all sorts of other ways in which the young people are going about trying to make change. And those are particularly interesting and exciting for young people. So I think that's a big part of it, is we know they're out there trying to make choices in their life about how to do well, and to give, but those may not always mean giving money to institutions that they want to give money to in the same way, or they may give less because of the financial constraints. So that points that's part of this troubling news, but it points us to some things we can try to work on. The last thing I'll say, just real quick, is that those findings are more significant for people across the economic spectrum. When you're talking about donors, like our book Generation Impact focuses specifically on those next gen donors who have the capacity for bigger giving, either through their family or their own. They are not seen as precipitous a decline, because the financial constraints are less for them than they would be if they didn't have those resources. So,
Could you define triple bottom line company for our listeners?
triple bottom line companies are companies that where the original, the classic bottom line is financial bottom line. What's your profit? Triple bottom line companies also consider other bottom lines, and they design their companies in order to maximize those, just like they do try to maximize profit, financial bottom line. Those would be things like environmental bottom line. Are is all your supply chain and your products and how you run a company and all of that, contributing in positive ways to the environment, or not, at least not mitigating those impacts that you do have. And then social bottom line, or some other version of that, which is, your hiring practices, your labor practices, how you're engaging as a community member in as a corporate citizen, all these other measures of your social bottom line. So it's not just financial bottom line, it's environmental bottom line and social bottom line. Yeah.
So this may not be a fair follow-up question to ask a researcher, but is it your hypothesis that if we were able to track all of the ways people are charitable in ways that feel charitable to them, that we would see that this generation is charitable in similar ways that other generations have been?
Yeah, I think we have measures where we ask them if what we mean by charitable is, are you interested in making the world a better place? Are you interested in the
Yeah.
plight of others less fortunate than yourself? Those kind of questions. Then we know that that's the case. We know that they haven't become, as particularly millennials sort of got maligned in this way for a while. This idea that they were really materialistic and entitled, and that they didn't really care about other people. That's certainly, we know that that's not the case, right? Based on these other, there's been these sort of annual surveys of college freshmen, for example, that have been going on for decades. So we know that they do believe that. But again, if what we mean by being charitable is giving to a nonprofit organization and giving money as your primary gift, that they are less charitable. We know that from longitudinal research when we look at what baby boomers when they were 20 were giving versus what millennials when they're 20 are giving, it's less.
Yeah. So, how do you see these next generation donors and prospects interacting with their alma maters in different ways than previous generations? You talked about giving, but how else is it different?
I think this is a big consequence of the work that we've been doing, in going and asking the next generation donors, how do they want to engage? What do they want to change about philanthropy? We talk about this sort of revolution that they want to bring, and really the revolution is not necessarily a revolution in the the what of philanthropy, which would be the causes, right? So education in higher education is still a cause that they care about.
Uh-huh.
They still care about, they still care, when we ask them, what causes, there's still some differences. They're more interested in climate change and, human rights issues, LGBTQ issues, et cetera. But for the most part, the causes are similar. So they want to give to higher education still. They still, and the why, the reasons why they want to give are still around their value. They're very similar to answers we get from older donors about their values and about wanting to give back when they feel fortunate, things like that. But where the revolution then is in the how. They really want to change the practices of giving in order to, in their mind, make giving work better, right? Achieve more impact. That's why
Mhm.
we talk about them as generation impact. They're really focused on trying to change whatever they need to change in order to achieve that impact. And one big area of that, particularly for the next generation, that's really different. There's a lot that's similar to older gens, but one that's really different is how they want to engage with those organizations that they support. They
Mhm.
want, and some of the specifics there, they want to be much more hands-on. They don't want to just, go to the big gala and have their name on a list, and then walk away, right? There's that old classic approach of giving of spray, pray, and walk away, right? You spread your money around when you got
Uh-huh.
some, and then you leave, you pray, and hope things go well. They want to be right there, rolling up their sleeves, helping to get the work done. And so what that means with higher education, for example, is that they don't want to just go to the big fundraising meeting or to just meet. This is challenge for fundraising advancement offices and foundations, university foundations. They don't want to just meet with the major gifts officer or with the fundraiser that they're assigned. They want to go and meet with the professors, sit with students, talk with the kids that get their scholarship, right? Whatever. So they want to be in there, and that's a lot more work. We talk about that they are much more high maintenance as donors in some ways, especially as they become more major donors than previous generations. But they will, if they feel like they are engaged, the payoff of that is that they'll be the biggest donors that you've ever had because because of wealth transfer and other things, are going to have significant resources to give. And so they do want to be much more hands-on. They also want to take more risks. They want to try new things if those things can potentially move the needle towards greater impact. They want to give more than just money, and that's a big one. We've always known with donors that if you involve them in a volunteer way, put them on a board or something, they'll be more loyal donors and maybe even give more. But with the next generation, they want to be doing that from the very beginning, and they want to do that in many ways. They want to be, especially if they are the next generation of a family that's already been giving to the institution. They don't want to just be seen as one of the people we interviewed said, I'm more than just my last name, right? I have skills that I want to bring. Yes, I sit on the board of the foundation and I'm going to be the chair of the board in 10 years, and we're going to continue to have the capacity to write big checks to the university. But I want to be in there as a lawyer, helping them make some choices. I want to be in there as a strategic planner, helping the business school decide how to build an entrepreneurship program. So they want to give their skills and their time and their talent. And for them, that's at least as valuable, if not more valuable, than any money that they can give. And so there's a lot of suggestions for how to do that, but that's certainly one different thing
Yeah.
that they want to do is take more risks, be more hands-on, and also they want to see results. There's a couple of metaphors that we use in philanthropy all the time, fundraising, that they don't like. One is the big thermometer, right? Where, you have the big campaign thermometer, and
Yeah,
they're
right.
sort of they're the next line on the thermometer. They want to know, okay, when we get to the thermometer, how many more students are going to
Mhm.
have graduate from this institution, or how many more people, how many more research grants are we going to be able to get that bring in undergraduates into a research project, or whatever that might be, right? Show me the impact. That's what they want to see. And the other metaphor they don't like is the relay race metaphor, where they say, I want to take the reins from the older generation, and I'm the one running things now, and you leave in the dust. Like, that's what the relay race metaphor. And we used it in a positive way for the most part, but they want to be working still with the older generation. So in all this innovation and change they want, that's going to be a lot of work for universities and other fundraisers, that they want to be hands-on, they want to be involved, they want to talk results and sit down regularly with you to, and talk to faculty about progress made in the last year, all this stuff. They still also want to benefit from the wisdom of older generations. They want to sit on boards with previous generations and learn from them, but also be taken seriously as the new person with a lot of ideas and energy. And they value that, and that's true within families as well. So they want to be involved in giving with their older generations of their family, if those are donors, in ways that are mutually beneficial, but that also let them give together as a family. They do want to be good stewards,
Yeah.
but they also want to change things in dramatic ways. So that's the dilemma that many people working with them face right now, frankly.
It's really interesting. I mean, it does kind of beg the question, how are we going to truly rethink engagement and stewardship
Yeah.
to be more meaningful and impactful? And, so that we can do these things in a way that makes people feel like they're having the experience and the impact they want, but still understanding that these are complex, sophisticated organizations, and there are ways we can use volunteer leaders and ways we don't.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
how do
There's this dynamic that you find in particular with people who are next generation, who are themselves, and I'm talking mainly about major donors here, but the next generation who have gone out and made their own wealth,
Mhm.
and often will have done that very young. So you get a lot of the sort of, finance wealth and tech wealth and
Mhm.
others, or other kind of entrepreneurial wealth, and we call it the bull in the china shop
Uh-huh.
kind of phenomenon.
Oh, I've
Uh,
never witnessed that in a board meeting. I don't know what you're
exactly.
talking about.
Where, they come in and they say, well, look, this
Yeah,
all disruption worked great for me,
right.
and throwing out all the ways of doing things and using this kind of, this approach where I just come in and I change all the systems in order to,
Yep.
achieve what we want to achieve and be really tirelessly focused on that goal, regardless of what gets broken in my path to get there. But what we find, and there is a definitely among certain members of and often very excited members of the next
Mhm.
generation of donors, that happens. What mitigates against that is this idea that they do want to be actively involved. So the more that they get involved, the more that they see that universities actually are run in pretty good ways,
Mhm.
that they do care about innovation, right?
Mhm.
And it also, another one of the things I mentioned was they want to take risks, but they also have all these new ideas.
Yeah.
They're always going to be bringing those ideas in, and they want those to be taken seriously, even if
Yeah.
we decide, well, that's not really going to work out for us right now. They just want to have their ideas taken seriously. And so the more that they see the complexity of the institution and that coming in and changing everything, because that's what you're giving them, and you'll say, hey, I'll give you $1 million if you get rid of this department and institute this new institute. More they realize that that's not how institutions work, but that institutions are still going to be responsive, so they don't just walk away and
Right.
say, this is a
Right.
big institution, I can't change anything. I would rather go out and find a startup nonprofit that's doing, education nonprofit that's doing this work. If they can see that there's a way that they can be innovative and
Mhm.
entrepreneurial and excited and hands-on with the existing institution, that will mitigate against the bull in the china shop
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of way.
And
Yeah.
in my experience, to your good point, these are sophisticated thinkers, and as they understand more, it's
Yeah.
helpful to have an outside perspective, to have new ideas, and if you can find a place to, that the ideas that they're providing are getting refined,
Yeah.
and you're open to, yeah, we have to change and be nimble.
Yeah.
It can be super exciting.
Yeah, we had one person tell us she really likes, there's a donor that is in our book, writes up her story, and she said, she really likes to go into older institutions, large and
Mhm.
bigger institutions, and try to offer them new ideas. And she said the worst thing they can do is tell me, I come in with this all excited about this new idea, and they say,
Yeah.
"Oh, we'll take a look at it."
Yeah.
That's just donor speak for no. They don't want to say no.
Right, exactly.
So they say, we'll take a look at it, and we never hear about it again.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
whereas I'd
people are
rather
gonna
them
realize
say,
that's a brush off.
yeah, I'd rather them say, you know what, we tried that back in 20,
Yeah,
18, and it didn't work for these reasons, but we're willing to keep talking about it. Why don't you
yeah,
start a task force and bring in some of your other donors that are friends and see if you can come up with a better way of doing it, and
yeah,
talk with some of the members of the faculty or some of the administrators that are running that institute and see if there's a way we can do that. And if there is, we're game for that, right?
yeah.
And that takes them seriously. It asks them to bring in their own expertise, also asks them to bring their peers, which is another great suggestion,
Yep.
and see if it works. So there's ways of responding to new ideas and excitement.
Mm-hmm.
without the brush off, as you say.
Yeah, yeah. So you have an opportunity to see lots of organizations at work. Can you share an example or two of institutions that you think have been really effective in engaging a multi-generational family?
Yeah, well, I mostly spend my time talking to the donors and doing
Yeah,
research from the donor side. So we don't usually talk about specific institutions, as you
but
know,
that's okay.
right? And
But some
so
examples.
so what
Yeah.
I can give as examples though are places in which donors who've told us stories about really an effective way in which. I'll give you two examples. One is donors telling us stories about big institutions like universities
Mm-hmm.
who've made themselves feel smaller to them
Mm-hmm.
because they've said, instead of just coming to me and saying, hey, here's, we really want to bring you into the campaign committee for the big capital campaign. And we're you're going to come to these meetings and you'll be asked to give, one or two input and then find two or three other donors to bring in as a capital campaign member. And we'll all get to to the $100 million goal or whatever it is, right?
Yep.
Together. That's not what that gets them excited. What'll get them excited is, hey, we want you to be on the campaign committee, but we'd really like you to focus on this one potential new idea. We'd really like to start a neonatal care institute at the University Hospital, or we'd really like to create a new entrepreneurship, scholarship program in the business school or whatever. And so we'd love you to come in and kind of be in charge of that, be the volunteer leader of that part of the
Mm-hmm.
campaign. It's part of the bigger campaign, but you have your specific goal. You have, specific tasks that we'd love you to do. You can bring in other donors for that. You can bring in your own idea, do your own research. And that's what really gets people excited because then they can see, okay, that's the goal. Remember, impact is what they're about. So they want
Right.
to see that's going to be the goal. And I can see that goal when we're done. Yes, I'll see
Mm-hmm.
that we raised a certain amount of money, but it's going to go toward this specific thing that we were part of developing the idea for, doing the fundraising for, and we gave a significant gift as well for ourselves. So that's one illustration that we get a lot, especially with universities. The other
Mm-hmm.
is when they're invited to come in and talk to people and fundraisers about with their older generations of their family. And so, to that story, the woman who says, I'm more than just my last name. There's
Mm-hmm.
another woman who gave us her story as a donor, and she says, my grandfather, who was the big wealth creator in the family, he really cared about the bricks on the outside of the building. And
Mm-hmm.
so when he would talk to the institutions, and this was the university she was talking about, they wanted to talk to him about, well, here's the naming opportunity for this, big STEM building or whatever it might be. But my generation of the family, we care about what goes on inside the building. And so
Mm-hmm.
when we go with she was only alive with her grandfather for a little while, but now with older generations of her family, they brought us in. And when there's multiple generations, they don't just talk about the naming rights with the older generation, and they don't just talk to the older generation. They talk to me in the room as well. And they talk to me as somebody who had my own interests and my own desires, and they give me the opportunity to engage. Yes, they still satisfy his desire for the naming rights, but they satisfy my desire to talk to people inside the institution or to explore a new idea. And they get us to talk with each other in a family. I think it's a great opportunity for any institution, but fundraising, universities especially here, to be the place where multiple generations of giving families can talk about their values and their philanthropic goals together. Right? You can be the space because the next generation is really looking for learning opportunities, and so if you can be the space where they can start to sort of flex their muscles and spread their wings, a little, whatever the metaphor you want, about their own, giving a little bit, and they can do that in a way that they're part of that team, not the relay race, but part of the team with the older generations, where they can learn why their grandpa was so excited about all the giving he's done to this in the past, and share with their grandpa, well, yeah, that's great. Now here's the program we'd really like to run in the building that's named after you. And in most cases that I'm familiar with, the grandparents are super excited about that, right? They
Yeah.
don't they like that the next generation is so interested in giving to these institutions that they are so loyal to.
Right.
Even if it wants to give in new ways, that's
Mm-hmm.
still super valuable for them. And if the university can facilitate that, then that's terrific for the future going forward.
You're also reminding me, I was having a conversation with a client recently about, how could they find out what what really moves people and their passion by looking outside the university. And, I had an example of a donor couple who had been giving to athletics, but they'd been earmarking their money for kind of student support in athletics. And they told the story to me, so they'd been stewarded as people, with tickets to games and that kind of thing. That was all their stewardship. Then they got a new gift officer who realized that they had earmarked their money that way. And the person called them and said, "Would you like to come and see the tutoring center?"
Mm.
And they were like, "Yeah, the student part of student athlete matters a lot to
Yeah.
us." And just by like looking at information that was already available, right? And looking at what the donors told you, either overtly, covertly, they were able to design a really meaningful experience for these donors. So and reflecting like, yeah, they care about athletics, but this is the part that really was meaningful to them. So I think that's really
Yep.
important. We make a lot of assumptions, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of information available that would allow us to steward people more meaningfully for them.
Yep. And listening to the next generation is the big,
Yeah.
really, really important one. Yeah.
So, in our last few minutes, I have if our listeners were going to adopt a couple of practices focused on engaging these next gen donors, what do you think they should be? What's your practical advice?
So I've given some of what I would say in response to that, and there's plenty more and we have an appendix to our book that's specifically for best practices for fundraisers, given what we
Mhm.
found about the next generation. But just a couple of those. The most important one, and this is the very first best practice we list, is don't wait.
Yeah.
There is I mean, it seems obvious, but many people will say, particularly you're at a smaller institution, you're a small development shop, you've got to meet your, goals for the year.
Yeah.
You need to spend your time with those people who can write the big checks now, rather than those people who will be writing potentially even bigger checks, but won't do it for 15, 20 years from now.
Mhm.
And marking some of your time to start working with the next generation, whether that's the next generation of the existing donor families or newer alumni that are starting to build wealth, or even just any sort of alumni that's starting to be prospects for annual giving or whatever. They want to build a relationship with institutions now.
Yeah.
They want to be giving their time as much as they can. And even if they can't yet write those big checks, we know as a generation, they're going to have the resources to, because if wealth concentration and wealth transfer continues, as it has been, they're going to have tremendous resources in the future. So they will eventually become big donors, and they'll give to those institutions that brought them in meaningful ways now. I talked about learning opportunities. I talked about working with multiple generations. I think, and I talked about giving them a chance to give, their time and their talent as well as just their money. The other quick one I'll give though is, ask them, start the conversation with them by asking them about their values. I do think, back to it, your listening point reminded me of this. A lot of times we hear people say, I talk to this potential donor about what they want to get out of their giving to the institution, right? What can we do for them? It's almost a transactional conversation.
Yeah.
And they said, I want a value. They said, I give because of my value. I'm driven by my values. Remember, their reasons for giving are very similar. That's
Mhm.
not really
Yeah.
changing with the next
Yeah.
generation.
That's
And
right.
so asking them questions like, what are you passionate about? What was your best experience at the university?
Hmm.
What would you most like to change? Those questions about what they care about and what their values are much more engaging for them than transactional
Yeah.
questions. And so I think those are a couple of good ones. And then
That-
show your impact, right? Give them a chance to come and see the impact. That you
Yeah.
have to do that.
That's great. Super helpful. Thank you so much, Dr. Moody, for sharing your research and providing really helpful information, actionable information for institutions who are working on engaging this next generation of donors. I want to take a moment to thank the Huron team who produces these webinars, all of you for listening. If you haven't yet, please connect with me and Huron via LinkedIn. Please follow Dr. Moody's research and definitely buy one of his books. Thank you so much for being with us here today. We appreciate it.
Thanks for the opportunity. Hope it was
Thank
helpful.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.